The ship was small. That was the first thing everyone noticed. Ambassador stood at the viewport of the ESV Olive Branch and watched the massive station grow larger against the stars. Prime, the seat of galactic power, home to the Grand Council that had ruled known space for 40,000 years. And her ship looked like a toy next to it. "Ambassador," said Commander Torres from behind her, "we're receiving docking instructions." Nodded but did not turn around. She kept her eyes on the station. It was beautiful in a cold way. The structure stretched across hundreds of kilometers. Towers of crystal and metal reached up like fingers grasping at the void. Ships moved around it like insects around a hive. Each of those ships was larger than anything humanity had ever built. 60 years. That was all the time humanity had been traveling between stars. 60 years since the first faster-than-light engine had carried humans beyond their home system. In that time, they had built colonies on 12 worlds. They had created a small fleet of ships. They had learned they were not alone in the universe. And now they were here, asking for a seat at the table with species who had been traveling the stars when humans still lived in caves. "Take us in," said. The olive branch moved forward, turned from the viewport and looked at her team. 6 people. That was all she had brought. Dr. Sarah, their science advisor, Commander Torres, head of security, James, their cultural specialist, Lieutenant Maya Singh, communications, Dr. Robert Farrow, legal expert, and young Ensign Thomas Park, who was officially listed as an aide but was really here to learn. 7 humans, about to face the rulers of the galaxy. "Remember the plan," said. "We speak with respect. We do not beg, we state our requests clearly. Whatever happens, we do not lose our dignity." They all nodded, could see the fear in some of their eyes. She felt it too. But she had learned long ago that courage was not the absence of fear, it was moving forward despite it. The ship docked with a gentle bump. Through the viewport could see the docking bay. It was enormous. Their ship sat in a corner like a child's toy left in a giant's room. Other vessels filled the bay. Ships of crystal, ships of living metal, ships that seemed to be made of pure light. "They're sending an escort," Maya reported. Straightened her formal jacket. It was dark blue with silver trim. The flag of the United Earth Government was on her shoulder. Simple, human. "Let's go meet them," she said. The airlock opened. Standing outside were 4 beings that looked like insects standing on 2 legs. They were tall, almost 3 meters high. Their bodies were covered in dark purple shells. Their heads had large, compound eyes that reflected the light in 1,000 different colors. The hosts of this station, one of the oldest species in the known galaxy. The lead made a clicking sound. A moment later, a translator device spoke in her ear. "Welcome to Prime, representatives of humanity. I am Coordinator Al. I will guide you to the Grand Chamber." Bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, Coordinator. We are honored by your welcome." The compound eyes seemed to shift. Something that might have been amusement crossed its alien face. "The Council awaits. Please follow." They walked through corridors that seemed designed to make visitors feel small. The ceilings were high. The walls were carved with images of great events from galactic history. Wars won, treaties signed, species rising and falling. 40,000 years of civilization, recorded in stone and crystal. Noticed that humans were not shown anywhere. The corridors were full of aliens, species had only seen in intelligence reports. The Ani passed by. They looked like humans made of crystal. Light moved inside their bodies like slow lightning. They did not walk so much as glide. One of them looked at with eyes that were windows into a galaxy of stars. A group stood near a doorway. They were massive, 4 meters tall. Their bodies were covered in thick scales the color of old blood. Their faces were like the faces of dragons from old Earth legends, teeth like knives, eyes like burning coal. They wore armor that seemed to be part of their bodies. Weapons hung from their belts. One of them watched the human delegation pass. Its mouth opened in what might have been a smile. but there was no warmth in it, only the kind of interest a predator shows for small things. Ensign Park walked a little closer to Commander Torres. They passed through more corridors, past more aliens, felt their eyes on her, some curious, some dismissive, some openly hostile, but most seemed simply uninterested, as if humanity was beneath their notice, not worth the effort of attention. Finally, they reached a massive door. It was made of some golden metal that seemed to glow with inner light. 2 guards stood on either side. Their ceremonial weapons looked beautiful. They also looked very deadly. "The Grand Chamber," Coordinator Al said. "The Council awaits. You may enter when the chime sounds. You will stand in the center circle. You will wait to be addressed. You will speak only when given permission. Do you understand?" Nodded, "We understand." The eyes shifted again, that same look of amusement. "Good luck, young species, you will need it." The coordinator turned and walked away, watched it go. Then she turned to her team. "Whatever happens in there," she said quietly, "remember who we are. Remember what we represent. 8 billion people are watching through us. The future of our species may depend on what happens in the next hour." "No pressure," muttered Dr. Farrow. Almost smiled, almost. The chime sounded. It was a deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate in bones. The golden doors began to open. Beyond them was the largest room had ever seen. The Grand Chamber was a hemisphere that must have been a kilometer across. The ceiling was transparent. Stars burned above them. The walls were lined with seats that rose in tiers, and every seat was filled. Hundreds of aliens, thousands, representatives of species from across the galaxy. They turned to watch as the human delegation entered. Some stood, some remained seated, some made sounds or gestures that translator could not interpret. In the center of the floor was a circle of light. Walked toward it. Her team followed. Their footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. As they reached the circle, looked up. Before her was a raised platform. On it sat 12 beings, the Council itself, the 12 elder species who had guided the galaxy for. She recognized them from the intelligence files. The High Seer, female, her compound eyes seemed to look through rather than at her. Telepaths, they could read minds across vast distances. The Ani Prime crystal, its form shifted constantly. Colors moved through its body like music made visible. The High Commander, massive even among his people. His scales were almost black. His eyes burned like stars about to die. The Eth Elder, a being of mist and shadow. It had no solid form, only a presence that made the air cold. And 8 others, ancient, powerful, each one the ruler of a species that had been old when Earth was young. For a long moment, no one spoke, stood in the circle of light and waited. She could feel the weight of thousands of eyes upon her. The silence pressed down like a physical force. Then the High Seer spoke. "Humanity," she said. The translator made her voice sound like wind through crystal. "You have come far for a species so young. We acknowledge your presence. We grant you the right to speak. State your purpose before this council." Took a breath. This was the moment, everything they had worked for, everything they had dreamed of. It came down to this. "Thank you, High Seer," she said. Her voice was steady. She made sure of that. "Thank you, members of the Council. I am Ambassador, representing the United Earth Government and all of humanity." She paused, let the words settle. "We come before you today not as beggars, not as servants seeking masters. We come as equals, as a species that has earned its place among the stars." Somewhere in the upper tiers something made a sound. It might have been a laugh. Ignored it. "We have 3 requests to place before this council. First, we request formal recognition of human sovereign space, our 12 colony worlds and the territories around them. We ask that these be recognized as belonging to humanity, protected by galactic law." She could feel the mood in the room, interest from some, amusement from others. The High Commander was smiling. It was not a friendly smile. Second, continued, we request a seat on this council, a voice in the governance of the galaxy. We believe we have earned this right through our achievements, through the speed of our progress, through what we have built in merely 60 years. Now there was more noise from the assembled aliens, open murmuring. Some of it sounded like disbelief, some of it sounded like mockery. Raised her voice slightly. Third, we request access to the shared knowledge archives, the collected wisdom of the elder species. We ask for the right to learn from those who came before us, to grow, to contribute our own knowledge in return. She stopped. The 3 requests were made. Now came the response. The silence stretched. The 12 council members looked at each other. Some kind of communication passed between them. The Ani flickered. The Eth swirled. The eyes pulsed. Then the High Commander leaned forward. These are your requests. His voice was deep, like stone grinding against stone. Recognition, a council seat, access to the archives. Yes, High Commander said, those are our requests. The looked at her for a long moment. His burning eyes studied her like a scientist studying an insect. Then he began to laugh. It started low, a rumbling sound from deep in his chest. It grew louder. His massive body shook with it. His teeth gleamed in the light, and the sound that came from him was pure, absolute mockery. The High Seer joined in. Her laugh was higher, musical, but no less cruel. One by one, the other council members followed. The Ani made sounds like breaking glass. The Eth howled like wind in a hollow place. The others added their voices, clicks and growls and sounds that had no human name. And beyond the council, the assembled thousands joined in. The entire grand chamber filled with laughter. It echoed from the walls. It rang from the ceiling. It surrounded the 7 humans standing in their circle of light. Did not move. Commander Tors tensed beside her. His hand went to his hip where a weapon would normally be, but they had come unarmed, a gesture of peace. Doctor lowered her head. Dr. Farrow clenched his fists. Ensign Park looked like he wanted to run, but did not move. She stood still in that storm of mockery. Her face remained calm. Her eyes remained fixed on the council, and she waited. The laughter went on. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Some of the aliens were pointing at them now, making gestures. The High Commander slapped his massive hand against his armrest. Tears of amusement fell from the High Seer's compound eyes. 3 minutes. Finally, slowly, the laughter began to fade. The echoes died away. The council members regained their composure. The assembled crowd quieted. The High Commander wiped his eyes. His voice was still shaking with amusement when he spoke. "A council seat," he said. "This young species wants a council seat. Tell me, human, do you know how old my people are? We were building empires when your ancestors were climbing down from trees. We were fighting wars across galaxies when your kind discovered fire. And you come here, 60 years old among the stars, and ask for a seat at our table." Said nothing, she simply watched him. The High Seer spoke. "We have seen many young species, human. They all believe they are special. They all believe they deserve what others have earned over. They all learn in time that the universe does not reward arrogance, only patience. You should be grateful," added the Ani Prime. "Grateful that we allow you to exist. Grateful that we have not claimed your little worlds for ourselves. Grateful that we noticed you at all." More agreement from the crowd, more murmuring, more barely hidden mockery. The High Commander settled back in his seat. His smile was the smile of someone who had just seen something very funny. "Go home, young ones," he said. "Come back in 1,000 years. Maybe 10,000. Learn your place. Accept a proper status. Become a protectorate of one of the elder races. That is the way. That is how the galaxy works. That is how it has always worked." He waved one massive hand. Dismissal, the gesture of someone brushing away something unimportant. "You may leave." stood still for a moment longer. The silence stretched. Every eye was on her, waiting to see what the young, foolish human would do, waiting for the begging to begin, for the apologies, for the acceptance of reality. Turned her head slightly. She looked at her team, 6 humans standing with her in that circle of light. She met each of their eyes in turn. Then she nodded, once, a small movement. And without a word, she began to walk. She walked toward the golden doors. Her team followed. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. They did not hurry. They did not run. They walked with their heads held high. Behind them, the council watched. Some were still smiling. Some looked confused. The High Seer's eyes narrowed. She was trying to read their minds, trying to see what they were thinking. But all she would find was cold, quiet determination. They reached the doors. The massive golden panels began to open. Starlight spilled in from the corridor beyond. Paused at the threshold. For just a moment she turned back. She looked at the council one last time, at the who had laughed loudest, at the who had called them arrogant, at the thousands of aliens who had mocked them. She said nothing. There was nothing to say. Words would be wasted on beings who could not hear them. Instead, she simply looked. Let them see her eyes. Let them see what was in them. Not anger, not fear, something else. Something they would not understand until it was too late. Then she turned away and walked through the doors. The golden panels closed behind them with a sound like a tomb sealing. On the bridge of the olive branch, gave her orders in a quiet voice. "Take us home," she said. "Maximum speed." "Ambassador," Commander Torres said carefully, "should we not try to negotiate? Perhaps there is another approach, another way to make them understand." Looked at him. For a moment something showed in her eyes, something that made Torres take a step back. "They laughed at us," said. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. "They laughed at humanity, at everything we are, everything we could become." She turned to the viewport. Prime was shrinking behind them. That massive station, seat of galactic power, growing smaller with every passing second. "They wanted us to beg," said. "They wanted us to apologize for daring to dream. They wanted us to accept our place at the bottom of their order." She was silent for a moment. "We will not beg. We will not apologize. We will not accept." "Then what will we do?" asked Doctor. Watch the stars ahead. Somewhere out there was Earth, humanity, 8 billion people waiting to hear what had happened. "We will go home," she said. "We will close our borders. We will stop asking for permission to exist. And then—" She paused. When she spoke again, her voice was iron wrapped in silk. "Then we will become something they cannot laugh at, something they cannot ignore, something they will never forget." The olive branch jumped to faster-than-light speed. The stars stretched into lines of light, and humanity disappeared into the void. Behind them, the council returned to its business. The laughter faded into memory. The young species had been put in its place. Order had been maintained. Nothing had changed. Or so they believed. In the grand chamber, the High Seer sat in silence. Her compound eyes stared at the closed doors where the humans had left. Something was troubling her, a feeling, a shadow of something she had glimpsed when she reached out to touch the ambassador's mind. She had expected to find fear, shame, desperation. Instead, she had found something else, something that burned like a cold star, something patient and implacable and utterly without mercy. She had found a promise. The High Seer said nothing to her fellow council members. What would she tell them? That she was afraid. That something about those 7 small creatures walking away in silence had disturbed her more than armies. They would laugh, just as they had laughed at the humans. So she kept her silence. And deep in her ancient mind, in a place where fear lived alongside wisdom, a small voice whispered a warning she could not quite hear. The humans had left without a word. And nothing would ever be the same. The first year passed without incident. The Galactic Council did not think much about the humans. Young species came and went. They made demands. They were rejected. They went home to sulk for a while. Then they came back, humble and ready to accept protectorate status. It was the way of things. On Prime, the incident in the Grand Chamber became a story told at diplomatic gatherings. A funny story. How the little humans had asked for a council seat. How they had walked out in silence, as if that would somehow frighten anyone. As if the elder races had anything to fear from creatures who had been traveling the stars for barely a heartbeat. The High Commander told the story best. He acted out the scene, making his voice small and high when playing the human ambassador. The audiences always laughed. Trade continued throughout the galaxy. Wars were fought in distant sectors. Treaties were signed. Species rose and fell. The great machine of galactic civilization turned on, indifferent to one small species on the edge of known space. But by the end of the first year, some began to notice something strange. Humanity had not come back. Ambassador of the consortium was the first to raise the issue formally. His species were traders. They traded with everyone. They had been preparing to approach human space with offers of commerce and cultural exchange. Standard practice with new species. Their first trade mission was turned away at the border. "We approached in peace," reported to his superiors. "We brought gifts. We signaled our friendly intentions, and the human border patrol simply refused us entry, politely, firmly. They said humanity was not accepting visitors at this time. They wished us safe travels, and they escorted us out of their space." They tried again. 3 more missions. Each one was turned away. The humans were never rude, never hostile. They simply said no. This was strange enough to mention to the council. The High Seer listened to the report with mild interest. "They are nursing their wounded pride," she said. "Young species often react this way. They will open their borders when they grow tired of isolation. It is only a matter of time." They accepted this wisdom. They turned their attention to more profitable ventures. The second year passed. Other species began reporting similar experiences. The ETH sent scouts to observe human space from the shadows. They returned with strange reports. The humans were not sitting idle. They were building. Ships moved constantly between human worlds. Great structures were being constructed in orbit around their colonies. Mining operations had begun in asteroid fields throughout their territory. Everything suggested rapid industrial expansion. "They are preparing to impress us," declared the Ani Prime. "Young species often try to build their way to respect. They think if they have more ships, we will take them seriously. They do not understand that we have seen this 1,000 times before." The council agreed. The humans were simply trying to make themselves seem important. It was almost endearing in a way, like watching a child stack blocks and call it a castle. But the High Seer kept her concerns to herself. Something about the reports troubled her. The speed of construction, the focus, the complete silence from human diplomatic channels. She tried again to reach out with her telepathy, to touch the collective mind of humanity from across the void. It was a long reach, difficult, but they had done it many times with other species. This time was different. She touched something, a vast presence, not one mind but billions, somehow connected in their shared purpose, and what she felt there made her pull back in shock. Cold, so cold, and beneath the cold, a fire that burned without light. Rage and patience wrapped around each other like lovers. A wound that had not healed but had been transformed into something else, something harder than stone. The High Seer told no one what she had felt. Who would believe her? The humans were just another young species, emotional, dramatic. They would calm down eventually. Would they not? The third year brought new concerns. Intelligence reports from the edge of human space showed that their territory had grown, not through conquest, through expansion. New colonies were being established. New systems were being claimed. The 12 human worlds had become 20, then 30. And still they spoke to no one. The scent a formal diplomatic mission, not because they cared about the humans, but the rapid expansion was beginning to look concerning. It was one thing for a young species to sulk in their corner of the galaxy. It was another for them to grow while they did it. The mission reached the human border. They announced themselves with all proper protocols. They carried the seal of the Empire. No species in the galaxy would refuse them audience. The humans refused them audience. "We appreciate the Empire's interest," the human response said. "However, humanity is not accepting diplomatic missions at this time. We wish you safe travels and good fortune in all your endeavors." The commander was furious. He demanded entry. He threatened consequences. He invoked the authority of the council itself. The human border patrol listened politely. Then they repeated their response, word for word, as if they were reading from a script. The mission returned home empty-handed. It was the first time in recorded history that there had been entry to anywhere. The High Commander was not amused. "What are they doing in there?" he demanded at the next council session. "What are they hiding? This is not normal behavior. This is not how young species act." "Perhaps they are simply learning to be independent," suggested the elder. "Perhaps they have decided they do not need us. It is a foolish decision, but they will learn. Isolation always fails in the end." "And if it does not fail," asked the High Commander, "if they continue to grow, to expand? Their population is already approaching 10 billion. Our projections suggest it could double within the next decade." "Impossible," said the Ani Prime. "No species reproduces at such rates. It would be biologically reckless. They would exhaust their resources." "And yet the reports suggest exactly that," the High Commander said. "They are breeding, building, expanding, at rates we have never seen before." The council debated. Some were concerned. Most were dismissive. The humans were just one small species among thousands. They could build all they wanted. They could breed like insects. It would not change the fundamental reality of the galaxy. The elder races had ruled for 40,000 years. They would rule for 40,000 more, and beyond. What could the humans possibly do to change that? The fourth year brought rumors. Traders who passed near human space brought whispers of things they had glimpsed from across the border. Ships unlike anything they had seen before. Stations that seemed to be factories for building more factories. Planets being transformed. Resources being extracted at industrial scales. And one rumor that was stranger than all the others. The humans were dismantling a gas giant. This rumor was so ridiculous that most dismissed it outright. You could not dismantle a gas giant. The technology required would be beyond anything even the elder races possessed. It would take centuries. But a trade scout managed to get close enough to observe before being turned away. What they saw confirmed the impossible. The fifth planet in humanity's home system was being taken apart. Massive orbital platforms surrounded it. Streams of material were being pulled up from the atmosphere, processed, transformed, sent to shipyards and construction facilities throughout human space. They were not just dismantling the gas giant. They were building with it. The report caused a sensation in council circles. For the first time, the dismissive attitude began to crack. This was not normal behavior. This was not a young species playing at being important. This was something else. "We must make contact," the High Seer said. It was the first time she had spoken strongly on the matter. "We must find out what they are doing, what they are planning. This silence cannot continue." "They have refused all contact," the High Commander pointed out. "What would you suggest? That we force our way in? Start a war with a species that is clearly preparing for one?" "I am suggesting that we try again, with humility, with respect. Perhaps we were too harsh 5 years ago. Perhaps they need to be approached differently." The council considered this. Pride fought with pragmatism. In the end, pragmatism won. A new mission was prepared, not a neutral species, they who were known for their diplomatic skills. The mission carried a message of reconciliation. The Council expressed regret for any offense given. They invited humanity to resume diplomatic relations. They offered trade, partnership, even the possibility of discussing humanity's original requests. It was, by the standards of the elder races, an extraordinary gesture. The human response came 3 days later. It was short. Thank you for your message. Humanity acknowledges the Council's communication. At this time, we have nothing to discuss. We wish the Council well in all its endeavors. Nothing more. They asked for clarification, asked what humanity wanted, asked what would make them willing to talk. There was no response. The 5th year was when the fear truly began. Not openly. The Council maintained its public position of unconcern. The humans were still just one species, still young, still primitive compared to the elder races, still no real threat to the order of the galaxy. But in private, in quiet conversations in shadowed halls, the concern grew. Intelligence reports were painting a picture that belief. Human space now contained over 50 colony worlds. Their population had exceeded 15 billion and showed no signs of slowing. Their industrial capacity had increased by a factor of 10, then 100. And their technology was advancing rapidly. Ships captured in long-range scans showed designs that did not match anything in human space 5 years before. New weapons, new propulsion systems, new everything. The humans were not just building. They were innovating, creating, inventing. As if they were driven by something more powerful than any engine. The Ani attempted to intercept human communications. The crystal beings were masters of signal analysis. They could decode transmissions across the galaxy. They could not decode human transmissions. The encryption was beyond anything they had encountered, layer upon layer of protection. It would take decades to break, maybe centuries. How is this possible? Demanded the Ani Prime. They have been in space for 65 years. We have been decoding communications for 600,000. How can they surpass us? No one had an answer. The High Seer made one final attempt to touch human minds. She gathered her most powerful telepaths. They formed a circle of thought. They reached across the void together. This time the presence they encountered was vast beyond measure. Not billions of minds, trillions, all focused, all united, all burning with the same cold fire. And this time the presence pushed back. The circle collapsed. 3 of the telepaths fell unconscious. 2 more suffered mental wounds that would take years to heal. The High Seer herself remained conscious, but what she had experienced left her shaking. She reported to the Council with trembling voice. They know we are watching them, she said. They have always known, and they do not care. They are not afraid of us. They are not impressed by us. They are simply waiting. Waiting for what? Asked the High Commander. The High Seer's compound eyes were haunted. I do not know, but I felt what drives them. I felt the wound we gave them. That laughter, that mockery, it did not break them. It transformed them. They have taken their humiliation and turned it into fuel, into purpose. She paused, her voice dropped to a whisper. They are not building a civilization. They are building an answer. The council chamber was silent. For the first time, the assembled elders looked uncertain. The dismissive confidence of 5 years had cracked. Something was happening in human space, something unprecedented, something they did not understand. The High Commander broke the silence. His voice was firm, confident, but those who knew him well could hear something beneath it, a note that had never been there before. They are children throwing a tantrum, he declared. They have built impressive toys. They have isolated themselves in their corner of the galaxy, but toys are still toys, and children are still children. He stood, His massive form cast a shadow across the chamber. We have faced threats before, real threats, species that had been building for millions of years, species with technology that made ours look primitive, and we defeated them all. We have ruled this galaxy for 40,000 years. We will rule it for 40,000 more. He looked around the chamber, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. The humans will burn themselves out. They will exhaust their resources. They will collapse under the weight of their own expansion. And when they do, they will come crawling back. They will beg for the protectorate status they should have accepted from the beginning. His voice hardened. Let them sulk. Let them build. Let them dream their little dreams. It changes nothing. They are a footnote in galactic history, nothing more. Some of the council members nodded. Others looked less certain. But no one spoke against the High Commander. His word carried weight. His confidence was contagious. Only the High Seer remained troubled. She had touched human minds. She had felt what lived there. And she knew with a certainty that went beyond logic that the High Commander was wrong. The humans were not burning themselves out. They were becoming something. Something born of laughter and silence. Something the galaxy had never seen before. She kept her peace. There was nothing more she could say. The council had made its decision. They would wait. They would watch. They would assume that the old patterns would hold. That night, alone in her chambers, the High Seer stared out at the stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness, humanity was building, growing, changing. She remembered the human ambassador, that small woman who had walked out of the grand chamber without a word, the look in her eyes in that final moment before the doors closed. Not anger, not fear. Promise. The High Seer shivered despite the warmth of her chambers. Something was coming. She could feel it like a storm gathering beyond the horizon. She could not see its shape. She could not know when it would arrive. But she knew with absolute certainty that when it came, nothing would ever be the same. In human space, the building continued. Ships by the thousands, weapons by the millions, a civilization forging itself into something new, something hard, something that would make the galaxy remember. And in a room on Earth, an old woman looked at reports and smiled. Ambassador was no longer young. The years had turned her hair white, had lined her face, had slowed her steps, but her eyes were the same, cold fire, patient rage. How much longer? She asked. The officer beside her checked his displays. 15 years at current pace, maybe less if we push harder. Nodded. 15 years, they could wait. They had learned patience. The universe had taught them well. And the council? Still watching, still waiting, still convinced we will fail. Almost laughed, almost. Let them wait, she said. Let them watch. Let them believe what they want to believe. She turned to the window. Outside, the night sky was full of ships, building, moving, preparing. When we are ready, she said softly, they will learn what silence really means. The stars burned on, indifferent and eternal. And humanity continued to build its answer. The warning came from the edge of the galaxy. A trading station in the frontier territories detected something strange on long-range sensors. Ships, thousands of them, moving in perfect formation from the void between galaxies. They were still months away, but their trajectory was clear. They were coming. The report reached the council within hours. The High Seer read it 3 times before she believed it. Then she called an emergency session. The harvesters, she said, her voice was heavy, they have returned. The chamber fell silent. For a long moment no one spoke. Even the High Commander, who feared nothing, seemed to shrink slightly in his seat. The harvesters, the ancient enemy, the nightmare that came from between the stars. Every 12,000 years they appeared, great machines of unknown origin. No one knew who had built them. No one knew why they existed. They simply came, and when they came, they consumed. Planets, moons, asteroids, anything with resources. The harvesters would descend upon a world and strip it bare, reduce it to dust, use the materials to build more of themselves. The last harvester wave had come 12,000 years ago. The elder races had been young then, strong, unified. They had built great defense networks across the frontier territories, weapons platforms, shield generators, early warning systems. It had taken 300 years to drive the harvesters back. Now they were coming again, and the galaxy was not what it had been. "How bad is it?" asked the elder. The High Seer brought up projections on the chamber's display. The numbers were not good. "Our estimates suggest the harvester force is larger than last time, significantly larger. The advance elements will reach the frontier in 6 months. The main wave will follow within a year." "Our defenses will hold," the High Commander said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "We have maintained the networks, upgraded them. They are stronger than ever." "The networks were designed for the previous wave," the High Seer said carefully. "If the harvesters have also upgraded." She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. The next 6 months were a nightmare of preparation. The elder races mobilized their fleets. Ships that had not flown in were pulled from storage. Weapons that had been forbidden for 10,000 years were brought out of vaults. The greatest military force in galactic history assembled at the frontier. And it was not enough. The first engagement came at the relay, an ancient station that anchored the outermost defense network. 300 ships of the elder races faced the harvester advance force. The battle lasted 6 hours. 263 ships were destroyed. The relay was consumed. The harvesters barely slowed. Report after report came back from the front lines, each one worse than the last. The ancient weapons were failing. The shields were not holding. The harvesters had evolved, adapted. They were stronger than before, faster, more numerous. In 3 months, the outer defense networks fell. In 4 months, the harvesters reached the first inhabited worlds. That was consumed in 6 days. 1 billion lives, gone. The planet itself was reduced to rubble, harvested for materials to build more machines. The lost 3 colony worlds. The shadow beings who had thought themselves beyond physical threat learned that they were wrong. Their people fled their bodies, becoming homeless spirits drifting in the void. They threw their entire fleet at the harvesters, 12,000 ships, the pride of an empire, the greatest military force the galaxy had ever known. They inflicted damage, real damage, but the harvesters simply absorbed their losses and kept coming. For every machine destroyed, 2 more took its place. The fleet was reduced to 3,000 ships, then 2,000, then fewer. The High Commander watched his empire crumble from the bridge of his flagship. His scales had gone gray. His eyes had lost their fire. He looked old in a way he had never looked before. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible? We are the masters of the galaxy. We have ruled for 40,000 years. How can we be losing?" No one had an answer. The council reconvened in emergency session. The chamber that had once been filled with confident voices was now heavy with fear. 3 of the 12 seats were empty. The species that had occupied them no longer existed. "We cannot stop them," the High Seer said. "It was not a question. Our fleets are broken. Our defenses are gone. The harvesters will reach the core worlds within months. They will consume everything." "There must be something," the Ani Prime said. The crystal being's form flickered erratically. Fear made visible. "Some weapon, some strategy, something we have not tried." "We have tried everything," the High Commander said. His voice was hollow. "Everything, nothing works. They are too many, too strong, too." He stopped. He could not finish. The elder spoke from the shadows. "There is one thing we have not tried." "What?" demanded the High Commander. "The humans." Silence, long and heavy. "The humans have been silent for 20 years, the High Seer said slowly. They have refused all contact. Why would they help us now? Why would they even respond? Because they are in danger too, the elder said. The harvesters will reach human space eventually. They must know this. Perhaps they will help us to save themselves. They hate us, the High Commander said. We laughed at them, mocked them, turned them away. Why would they come to our aid? Because we have nothing else, the elder replied. No other options, no other hope. If the humans refuse, we are no worse off than we are now. If they agree. The elder did not finish, but the implication hung in the air. I will send the message, the High Seer said. I will make the request myself, and I will tell them the truth, all of it, the danger, our failure, our desperation. She paused. And our regrets. The message was sent, a direct transmission to human space, no diplomatic protocol, no formal language, just the truth. To the people of humanity, this is the High Seer speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. We face extinction. The harvesters have returned, our defenses have failed, our fleets are destroyed. We have nowhere else to turn. We are asking for your help. We know we have no right to ask. We know what we did 20 years ago. We know the wound we gave you, but we are begging you, help us, please. The message went out, and then the waiting began. 1 hour passed, 2. The council sat in their chamber watching the stars through the ceiling, watching for a response that might never come. The High Commander had his head in his hands. The High Seer sat motionless, her compound eyes fixed on nothing. 3 hours. 4. They will not answer, the High Commander said. They are watching us die. They are enjoying it. Perhaps, the High Seer said, and if so, we deserve it. 5 hours. 6. The communications officer's voice broke the silence. We are receiving a transmission from human space. Every head in the chamber turned. The display flickered. A human face appeared, not the old ambassador, someone younger, a man with dark skin and silver hair. His face was calm. His eyes were steady. This is Fleet Admiral James of the United Earth Navy, responding on behalf of humanity. We have received your message. We have monitored your situation. He paused. His expression did not change. We remember the laughter. We remember the mockery. We remember walking out of your chamber in silence while you dismissed us as children. The council members looked at each other. Here it came, the refusal, the revenge. But we also remember who we are, what we believe, what we stand for. Another pause, then. Humanity does not abandon those in need, even those who have wronged us. We are not defined by the wounds others give us. We are defined by the choices we make. The Admiral's eyes seemed to look directly at the High Seer, at the High Commander, at all of them. We are coming, transmitting defense coordinates now. Organize your remaining forces at these positions. We will arrive in 48 hours. The transmission ended. The coordinates appeared on the display. Strategic positions throughout the frontier. Positions that would form a defensive line between the harvesters and the core worlds. The chamber erupted. They are coming, someone said. They are actually coming. But what can they do? The High Commander asked. Their fleet was small 20 years ago. Even if they have grown, they cannot match the harvesters. No one can. They sounded confident, the High Seer said quietly. Did you hear his voice? He sounded like a man who knows something we do not. Or like a fool who does not understand what he faces. The High Seer shook her head slowly. I do not think so. They have had 20 years to prepare, 20 years to build, 20 years to become something new. She thought of what she had glimpsed when she touched human minds, that cold fire, that patient rage, that terrible purpose. We will see, she said. In 48 hours, we will see what humanity has become. The hours passed slowly. The harvesters continued their advance. 3 more worlds fell. The refugee fleets grew larger, billions of beings fleeing before the tide of destruction. The Council organized its remaining forces at the coordinates humanity had provided. It was not much, a few thousand ships, the broken remnants of once mighty fleets, enough to delay the harvesters, not enough to stop them. They waited at a place called the Threshold, the last defensive line before the core worlds. If this position fell, nothing stood between the harvesters and the heart of galactic civilization. The High Commander had insisted on leading the defense himself. His flagship, the Wrath of, sat at the center of the formation. His remaining warriors surrounded him. They would fight to the end. They would die with honor. It would not be enough. Everyone knew it, but they would fight anyway. The 48th hour approached. Sensors detected the Harvester fleet closing in. Thousands of machines, millions, a cloud of death stretching across the stars, the largest enemy force in recorded history. They will be in weapons range in 6 hours, the tactical officer reported. Our fleet is ready. We will hold as long as we can. The High Commander nodded. His old fire had returned somewhat. If he was going to die, he would die fighting. It was the way. Signal all ships, he said. Today we write the final chapter of our history. Let it be a chapter worthy of our ancestors. The ships powered their weapons. The shields went up. The formation tightened. Every being in that fleet knew they were about to die. They faced it with the courage of their species. Then something happened. The sensor officer's voice cut through the bridge. High Commander, detecting new contacts, behind us. Behind us, the High Commander turned. Where? Emerging from faster-than-light travel, multiple signatures, many signatures. The display updated, and the High Commander's breath stopped in his throat. Ships were appearing from nowhere. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. They materialized out of the void like ghosts becoming solid, and they kept coming, more and more. A fleet beyond anything the High Commander had ever seen. 10,000 ships. 20,000. 30. They were not like the ships he remembered, not the quaint vessels that had carried the human delegation 20 years ago. These were something else entirely. They were angular, brutal, built for one purpose and one purpose only. Their hulls were black as space. Their weapons arrays glowed with strange energy. They moved in perfect formation, spreading across the battlefield like a dark wave. And at their head flew a dreadnought that dwarfed even the flagship. It was massive, kilometers long, bristling with weapons that did not match any known technology. Its name was painted on the hull in letters of white fire. HFY Olive Branch II. The communication channel opened, that same calm voice, Admiral. Galactic Council Forces, this is the United Earth Navy. We have arrived. Please maintain your positions and prepare for coordinated defensive operations. The High Commander found his voice. Admiral, this fleet, how? 20 years, High Commander. 20 years of silence. 20 years of building. 20 years of remembering why we needed to be strong. The human ships were spreading out now, taking positions around and among the Council fleet. Each one radiated power. Each one looked like it had been built by beings who expected to face the end of the world. We have not forgotten what you did to us, the Admiral continued. We have not forgotten the laughter, but we have learned something in our years of silence, something important. The Harvester fleet was closer now, hours away, the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. Cruelty does not defeat cruelty, the Admiral said. Vengeance does not heal wounds. We could have watched you die. We could have let the Harvesters consume you while we hid in our corner of the galaxy. Some of our people wanted that. His voice hardened. But that is not who we chose to become. The galaxy will learn what humanity truly is, not through the words we speak, through the actions we take, through the choices we make when the cost is highest. The Admiral paused. When he spoke again, his voice was iron. Today, the Harvesters learn what happens when they threaten our galaxy. Today, The Council learns what humanity built in the silence. Today, everyone learns that we are more than our wounds. On the bridge of the Olive Branch II, Admiral James looked at the approaching enemy. He had been young when he walked out of that chamber, when he had followed Ambassador through those golden doors. He had been afraid then, ashamed. He was not afraid now. "All ships," he said. "This is Admiral, you know why we're here, you know what we've built, you know what we've sacrificed." Across the fleet, crews listened. Humans who had been born into a civilization of purpose, who had grown up knowing that one day they would face this moment. 20 years ago, the galaxy laughed at us, called us children, told us to learn our place. Today, we show them what we learned. Today, we show them what children can become. He looked at the stars, at the enemy, at the fleet that humanity had built from nothing. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who stood in that chamber and refused to beg. He drew a breath. "All ships advance." The human fleet moved forward, 30,000 ships of war, built with rage, armed with patience, coming to face the darkness. And the harvesters, for the first time in 12,000 years, found something that would not run. Something that was not afraid. Something that had come to teach the universe a lesson. The High Commander watched from his bridge. His compound eyes were wide. His ancient hearts were pounding. He had fought wars for centuries. He had seen fleets rise and fall. He had witnessed the birth and death of civilizations. He had never seen anything like this. "What have they become?" he whispered. Beside him, a young officer spoke. Her voice was soft with wonder. "Something new," she said. "Something we made when we laughed." The High Commander said nothing. In the distance, the human fleet met the harvesters. And the fire began. The first wave hit like a hammer. The harvesters came in their billions, machines the size of cities, machines smaller than fighters, all of them moving with the same cold purpose: consume, grow, spread. The Council forces held their positions as instructed. They watched the human fleet advance. They expected to see the familiar patterns of galactic warfare: careful maneuvering, strategic retreats, conservation of forces. They did not see any of those things. The human vanguard slammed into the harvester swarm at full speed. No hesitation, no caution. They plunged into the enemy like knives into flesh, and as they did, they opened fire. The weapons were nothing like anything the Council had seen before. Beams of light that tore through harvester hulls like paper, missiles that detonated in cascades of reality-warping energy, kinetic rounds accelerated to fractions of light speed, hitting with the force of small nuclear weapons. The space between the fleets turned white with destruction. "What are those weapons?" the High Commander demanded. He was watching from his flagship, surrounded by his officers. All of them were staring at the displays in disbelief. His tactical officer shook her head. "Unknown, High Commander. The energy signatures do not match any known technology. The humans must have developed them during their isolation. In 20 years, we have been developing weapons for 40,000. How could they possibly?" He stopped. There was no point asking questions no one could answer. The battle unfolded in all its fury. The human fleet fought unlike any force the galaxy had ever seen. They did not hold back. They did not protect their ships. They threw themselves at the enemy with a ferocity that bordered on madness. When a harvester cluster threatened to break through the line, human ships would charge directly at it. Sometimes they would win. Sometimes they would be destroyed. They did not seem to care. When a massive harvester dreadnought emerged from the swarm, 5 human vessels converged on it simultaneously. They hit it with everything they had. 3 of them were destroyed in the assault. The other 2 rammed the harvester at full speed, their antimatter reactors detonating on impact. The dreadnought died with them. Admiral commanded from the bridge of the Olive Branch II. His voice was calm, steady. He gave orders in a constant stream, coordinating the vast fleet like a conductor leading an orchestra of destruction. 3rd Division, reinforce Sector 7. 5th Division, hold that line. Automated squadrons, prepare for mass deployment on my mark. His officers worked their stations with practiced precision. They had trained for this. All of them. Every human in the fleet had spent their lives preparing for this moment. The moment when humanity would show the galaxy what it had become. "Admiral," his sensor officer reported, detecting a massive harvester formation approaching from the starboard flank, estimated 2 million units. 2 million. The number would have been impossible for any other fleet to face. Admiral simply nodded. "Deploy the wave." Across the human fleet, cargo bays opened. Thousands of small ships poured out. They were automated vessels, crewed by no one. Each one was packed with antimatter. Each one was programmed with a simple directive. Find the enemy, hit the enemy, explode. The wave swept toward the harvester formation. The machines tried to shoot them down. They succeeded with many, but there were too many, too fast, too willing to die. The wave hit the formation. 100,000 simultaneous detonations. A wall of fire stretching across thousands of kilometers. When it faded, the harvester formation was gone. 2 million machines reduced to vapor. The High Commander watched with his mouth open. "They sent unmanned ships to die," he said. "Kamikaze tactics on a mass scale." "Not just unmanned ships," his tactical officer said. "Look at this, High Commander." She brought up a recording from the battle. A human cruiser, engines damaged, drifting toward a harvester swarm. It should have been destroyed. It should have called for rescue. Instead, it turned its nose toward the largest harvester in the swarm. It accelerated. The crew could be heard on the open channel, singing something. A human song. They were singing as they rammed their ship into the enemy at full speed. The explosion killed the cruiser. It also killed 14 harvester vessels. "They are insane," the High Commander whispered. "No," said a voice behind him. He turned. A human officer stood there, a liaison from the Olive Branch II assigned to coordinate with the Council forces. She was young. Her face was calm. Her eyes were not. "We are not insane," she said. "We are determined. There is a difference. You throw your lives away. You ram your ships into the enemy. You send automated weapons to die by the thousand. How is this not madness?" The human officer looked at him. Something in her gaze made the ancient feel small. "You have lived for a very long time, High Commander. Your species has ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. You have forgotten what it means to fight for survival, to fight with everything you have, holding nothing back, because losing is not an option." She gestured at the battle outside. "We had 20 years, that's all. 20 years to build a fleet that could face the harvesters. We didn't have time to be careful. We didn't have resources to waste. Every ship we built knowing it might be destroyed. Every weapon we made knowing we might have to use it all at once." Her voice hardened. "And every human who joined this fleet knew they might not come home. They came anyway, because we decided that our species would not die in the dark, that we would not be forgotten, that if we had to burn, we would burn so bright the whole galaxy would see it." The High Commander had no response. The battle raged for 9 days. 9 days of constant fighting. 9 days of fire and death and destruction on a scale the galaxy had never witnessed. The human fleet took losses, terrible losses. Ships by the 100 fell. Lives by the 1,000 ended. The blackness of space was filled with debris and bodies and the ghosts of the fallen. But they did not retreat. They did not ask for help. They just kept fighting. On the 3rd day, the harvesters adapted. They changed their tactics. They started targeting human command ships, trying to disrupt the coordination that made the fleet so effective. Admiral responded by distributing command across the entire fleet. Every ship became capable of operating independently. The harvesters killed command ships. More ships became command ships. The humans kept fighting. On the fifth day, the harvesters unleashed something new, a weapon that disrupted faster-than-light engines. Ships caught in its effect were trapped, unable to escape. The harvesters swarmed them. The humans responded with a weapon of their own, devices that tore holes in local spacetime, creating brief windows of impossible physics. Anything caught in those windows was simply erased, gone. The harvesters learned to avoid the human ships carrying those weapons. The humans learned to hide them among regular vessels. On the seventh day, the harvesters attempted to bypass the human fleet entirely. A massive force tried to swing around the battle, heading directly for the core worlds. 60 human ships broke from the main fleet to intercept. They were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. They knew they would not survive. They went anyway. The recording of their final hour was transmitted back to the fleet. 60 ships, fighting against overwhelming odds, taking down enemies 10 times their number, buying time for the main fleet to respond. One by one, they fell. One by one, their lights went out. The last ship, a destroyer called the Never Again, fought for 4 hours alone against the remaining harvester force. Its captain broadcast a message in the final minutes. "This is Captain Sarah of the Never Again. We are out of missiles. Our main weapons are gone. We have hull breaches on 12 decks, but we are still here. We are still fighting, and we will keep fighting until there is nothing left." A pause, the sound of explosions in the background. "To the fleet, don't mourn us. Don't hesitate, win this war, show the galaxy what we are." Another pause, then softer. "Mom, Dad, if you're listening, I love you. I'm proud of who we became." The Never Again rammed the largest remaining harvester at full speed. The explosion lit up the sector. When the main fleet arrived to finish off the bypassing force, they found debris. Harvester debris. Thousands of machines destroyed by 60 human ships. The crews of the fleet did not cheer. They were silent. They knew what had been paid for that victory. And they knew they would pay the same price if asked. On the 8th day, the High Commander made a decision. His people had been watching, holding their positions, following the human instructions, but they were warriors. They could not watch others fight and die while they stood by. He gave the order. The fleet, what remained of it, joined the battle. They were only 2,000 ships, a fraction of what they had once commanded, but they knew how to fight, they knew how to die. The High Commander led them himself. His flagship, the Wrath of, plunged into the harvester swarm alongside the humans. Weapons, ancient and powerful, added their voice to the symphony of destruction. Warriors, the finest in the galaxy, fought side by side with humans they had once mocked. "This is High Commander," he broadcast to the human fleet. "We stand with you. We fight with you. Whatever happens, we face it together." Admiral's response was immediate. "Welcome to the fight, High Commander. Stay close and follow our lead. Let's finish this." The other council forces followed. The Ani, with their ships of living crystal. They with their ancient telepathic vessels. Even the Eth, beings of shadow who had never fought a physical battle, manifested weapons and joined the line. The full force of the galaxy, united against the darkness. It was still not enough. The 9th day dawned over a battlefield of horror. The human fleet had lost 60% of its ships, 18,000 vessels gone, hundreds of thousands of humans dead. The council forces had lost even more. They were down to 500 ships. The Ani had lost their prime crystal. The High Seer's flagship was burning, its crew evacuated to other vessels. And the harvesters were still coming. Not as many as before. The combined fleet had done incredible damage. Millions of machines had been destroyed. The harvester advance had been slowed, then stopped, but the enemy was not defeated. In the heart of the swarm, something remained. The Harvester Command Vessel, the largest machine ever recorded, a structure the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons and factories and endless malice. As long as it survived, the harvesters would keep coming, keep building, keep consuming. "We have to destroy it," Admiral said. His voice was hoarse. He had not slept in days. None of them had. "Nothing else matters. That command ship dies, the rest of the swarm loses coordination. We can mop them up." "Our weapons cannot penetrate its shields," the High Commander said. He was on the Olive Branch II now, his own ship too damaged to fight. "We have tried. Nothing works." "Not alone," agreed, "but together." He brought up a tactical display. The remaining human dreadnoughts, 12 of them, the most powerful ships humanity had ever built. A concentrated strike, all 12 dreadnoughts hitting the same point at the same time, every weapon we have, everything we've got left. "The approach will be suicide," the High Commander said. "The defensive fire from that vessel." "I know," his voice was quiet, "I know." He looked at the display, at the command ship, at the 12 dreadnoughts. "I'll lead the strike myself." The High Commander stared at him. "You would die." "Probably," almost smiled. "But we've been dying since this started. Every human who joined this fight knew they might not go home. That was never the point." "Then what was the point?" Met the ancient warrior's eyes. "The point was that we came, that we didn't hide, that when the galaxy needed us we were here. Whatever happens next, they'll remember that. They'll remember what we did, what we were willing to pay." He turned back to the display. "And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all anyone can really give, everything they have for the people they care about." He opened a fleet-wide channel. "All dreadnoughts, this is Admiral. Form up on the Olive Branch II. We're going to end this." 11 ships acknowledged. They began to move. Great vessels of war, battered and coming together for one final strike. On the Olive Branch II, an old woman made her way to the bridge. Ambassador, 92 years old, too frail to walk without assistance, but she had demanded to be here, demanded to see this through to the end. She had been young when she walked out of that chamber. She would not live to see what came after, but she would see this. Ambassador said, "You should be in medical." "I should be right here." Her voice was thin but steady. "I started this. I need to see it finished." The Admiral nodded. He understood. The 12 dreadnoughts formed up. The command ship loomed ahead, vast and terrible. Harvester defenders swarmed around it. Thousands of machines ready to protect their master. "All ships," said, "charge weapons. Full power to forward shields. On my mark, we punch through to that command ship and we give it everything we have." Acknowledgements came back. 12 ships, 12 crews, all of them ready. Spoke, her voice went out on the open channel. Every ship in the fleet heard her. Every surviving member of the council heard her. The whole galaxy heard her. 21 years ago, I stood in a golden chamber and asked for recognition, for a seat at the table, for a chance to learn. You laughed at me, at all of us, at everything humanity was and could become. She paused. Her old eyes looked out at the stars. We left without a word, because words were useless. Words meant nothing to beings who had already decided we were beneath them. Another pause. So we built, we prepared, we became something you could not ignore, and when you needed us we came, not for revenge, not for recognition, because it was right. Her voice strengthened. This is what humanity is, not our technology, not our ships, not our weapons. This is what we are, beings who choose to help even when we have every reason to walk away, beings who face the darkness even when we're afraid, beings who believe that what we do matters even when we might not survive to see it. She looked at the crew, at all of them. Now we finish this, together, and whatever happens, know that I am proud, proud of every human who stood with us, proud of every ally who joined us, proud of what we became. She smiled. An old woman's smile full of memory and hope. Debt paid. Gave the order. All ships attack. The 12 dreadnoughts surged forward. The Harvester defenders came to meet them. Fire and death and destruction. Ships died on both sides, but the dreadnoughts kept coming, pushing through, paying in blood for every kilometer. The command ship loomed larger. Its weapons targeted the approaching fleet. Beams of energy tore through shields. 3 dreadnoughts fell, then 2 more. 7 ships remained, then 6, then 5. The Olive Branch II was burning. Half its weapons were gone. Its shields were failing, but it was still moving, still fighting. Admiral stood on the bridge, stood beside him. Around them, the crew worked their stations with steady hands. In range, the weapons officer reported. All remaining ships report weapons locked. Fire said, everything now. 12 dreadnoughts, 7 still alive, all of them firing at once. Every weapon they had, every ounce of power, everything humanity had built, concentrated on a single point. The command ship's shields held for a moment, a heartbeat, an eternity. Then they failed. The weapons punched through, into the heart of the machine. The cascade of destruction spread. Explosions rippled across the vast structure. Systems failed. Factories went dark. The command ship began to break apart. The harvesters throughout the system froze, then began to drift. Their coordination was gone. Their purpose was gone. They were just machines now, just metal and programming without direction. On the bridge of the Olive Branch II, the crew watched the command ship die. Closed her eyes. "It's done," she whispered. "We did it." Took a breath. He felt like he had been holding it for 20 years. "All ships," he said. "The command ship is destroyed. Begin cleanup operations. We've won." A cheer went up across the fleet. Human and alien voices together. The sound of victory. The sound of survival. Opened her eyes. She looked at the admiral, at the crew, at the stars. "Thank you," she said. "All of you." Nodded. There were tears in his eyes. He did not try to hide them. "Thank you, Ambassador, for starting this, for believing it was possible." Smiled again, that old peaceful smile. "I always knew. I knew what we could become. I just needed the galaxy to see it too." She looked out at the debris, at the remains of the command ship, at the drifting harvesters being picked off by combined fleet operations. They see it now. The battle was over. Humanity had paid a terrible price, but they had come when called. They had fought when needed. They had won when it seemed impossible. And nothing would ever be the same. The war was over. The cleaning up was not. For 6 months after the Battle of the Threshold, combined fleets swept through the affected sectors. Harvester remnants were tracked down and destroyed. Damaged stations were repaired. Refugees were returned to their worlds, or what was left of their worlds. 3 elder species had been destroyed completely. They were gone. Their people were gone. Their histories, stretching back millions of years, were reduced to memories held by those who had known them. The other species survived, damaged, broken, changed forever, but alive. Humanity counted its own losses. 18,000 ships, 400,000 dead. Nearly every family on every human world had lost someone. The victory had been bought in blood and grief. But they had won. The human fleet to its own space. They did not ask for rewards. They did not demand payment. They simply went home, to mourn, to rebuild, to figure out what came next. The council was left with questions they did not know how to answer. What did you say to a species you had mocked? A species you had dismissed as children? A species that had come to save you when you were dying and had paid for your survival with hundreds of thousands of their own lives? The High Seer spent long hours in meditation, searching for the right words. The High Commander sat alone in his quarters, staring at the walls. The remaining council members debated endlessly about protocols and procedures and proper forms of recognition. None of it seemed adequate. Finally, 6 months after the battle, an invitation was sent. To the United Earth Government and the people of humanity, the Galactic Council formally invites a delegation to return to the Grand Chamber on Prime. We wish to discuss matters of great importance. We ask that you honor us with your presence. The message was carefully worded, humble, respectful, very different from the casual summons sent to young species in the past. 2 weeks later, the response came. The United Earth Government accepts the Council's invitation. A delegation will arrive in 30 days. We look forward to productive discussions. Short, businesslike, giving nothing away. The council members looked at the message and wondered what humanity would demand. The price for salvation, the cost of their silence being broken. Whatever it was, they would pay it. They had no choice. 30 days later, a human ship entered the Prime system. It was not a fleet this time, just one vessel, a diplomatic transport, sleek and elegant. It bore the flag of the United Earth Government on its hull. It also bore a name, ESV Ambassador. Had died 3 weeks after the battle. Her body had given out finally after 92 years, but her mind had stayed sharp until the end. She had seen the victory. She had known that humanity had proven itself. Naming a ship after her was the smallest tribute her people could give. The transport docked at the same bay where the Olive Branch had docked 21 years before. The same bay where a small delegation of 7 had walked out to face a galaxy that mocked them. This time the delegation was larger, 20 representatives, scientists, diplomats, military officers, cultural advisors, and at their head, walking with the slow, careful steps of the very old, was a familiar figure. Ambassador Ai. Not the original, her granddaughter, named for the woman who had started everything. She was 63 years old with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She walked with a cane, not from weakness but from an old injury. She had commanded a destroyer at the Battle of the Threshold. The scar on her leg was from a piece of shrapnel that had torn through her bridge. Now she wore diplomat's clothes instead of a uniform, but she walked like a soldier. The corridor to the Grand Chamber was the same, the high ceilings, the carved walls, the history of 40,000 years recorded in stone and crystal, but something had changed. Humanity was shown now. New carvings had been added, images of human ships, human warriors, the battle of the Threshold, the destruction of the command ship, the moment when a young species had become something more. Ambassador looked at the carvings as she walked. Her face showed nothing, but her eyes lingered on one image in particular, a small woman in diplomat's clothes, walking away from a chamber full of laughing aliens. Her grandmother, captured forever in stone. The golden doors opened. The Grand Chamber was not as full as it had been 21 years ago. The destruction of 3 elder species had left empty sections in the tiers. The remaining species had spread out, trying to fill the gaps, but the absences were obvious. The 12 seats of the council were now 9. The High Seer sat in her place. She looked older somehow, though her species did not age as humans did. The compound eyes were the same, but something in them had changed. The High Commander sat beside her. He was now. A long mark ran across his face from his left eye to his jaw, a gift from the battle. He had refused to have it healed. He said he wanted to remember. The other council members watched as the human delegation entered. Their eyes followed Ambassador as she walked to the center circle, the same circle where her grandmother had stood 2 decades before. The silence stretched. Then the High Seer spoke. Ambassador, her voice was different, softer, without the cold edge it had carried before. Granddaughter of, hero of humanity, you honor us with your presence. The ambassador inclined her head. High Seer, Thank you for the invitation. We have much to discuss. The High Seer paused, but first there is something that must be said. She rose from her seat. The other council members rose with her. It was an ancient gesture, a sign of respect reserved for equals, for honored guests, for those who had earned the right to stand among the great. 21 years ago, your grandmother stood in this chamber. She came with hope, with dreams of partnership and recognition, and we laughed at her. The High Seer's voice cracked slightly. We laughed at her courage, at humanity's achievements, at everything your species had built in 60 years among the stars. We called you children. We told you to learn your place. We dismissed you as nothing. She looked at the human delegation, at the faces of beings who had lost family and friends, saving a galaxy that had mocked them. We were wrong. The words hung in the air. We were arrogant, blind, so convinced of our own superiority that we could not see greatness when it stood before us. We wounded you deeply, and you would have been justified in leaving us to die, but you did not. The High Seer stepped down from her platform. She walked across the chamber floor until she stood before Ambassador. Ancient eyes met human eyes. You came, you fought, you bled and died beside us. You saved us, and you asked for nothing in return. She lowered her head, a gesture of submission, of apology, of gratitude beyond words. On behalf of the Galactic Council, on behalf of every species that survives because of your sacrifice, I apologize. We were wrong about you. We were wrong about humanity, and we owe you a debt that can never be repaid. She raised her head. Tell us what you want. Anything within our power, it is yours. The chamber was silent. Every eye was on Ambassador. The weight of history pressed down on her shoulders. She thought of her grandmother, of the stories she had been told as a child, of the old woman's voice describing the laughter, the walk through those golden doors, the years of building and waiting and hopping. She thought of the friends she had lost in the war, the crew of her destroyer who had died around her, the hundreds of thousands of humans who would never come home. She thought of what her grandmother would want. Then she spoke. 21 years ago, my grandmother came to this chamber with 3 requests. The council members shifted. They knew what was coming. They had discussed it endlessly. Recognition of human space, a council seat, access to the archives. They were ready to grant all 3. First, the ambassador said, recognition of human sovereign space. Granted, the High Seer said immediately, unanimously and without reservation. Second, a seat on the Galactic Council. Granted, a permanent seat with full voting rights as equals. Third, access to the shared knowledge archives. Granted, complete access to all records, past and future. The ambassador nodded. Thank you, my grandmother would be pleased. She paused. The council members waited. The 3 requests had been made and granted. It was done. But the ambassador was not finished. There is a 4th request. The chamber stirred. The council members looked at each other. A 4th request. This was not in the original demands. What more could humanity want? Name it, the High Seer said. Her voice was cautious now. If it is within our power. Ambassador looked around the chamber, at the empty seats where species had once sat, at the scars that war had left on the ancient walls, at the faces of beings who had laughed at her grandmother and then been saved by her grandmother's people. I request that this council formally abolish the practice of mockery toward younger species. Silence. I request that from this day forward, every species that comes to this chamber is treated with dignity, with respect, with the understanding that youth is not weakness, that inexperience is not inferiority, that every species has potential we cannot predict. Her voice grew stronger. My grandmother was laughed at because humanity was young, because we had not earned our place by your standards, but your standards were wrong. They measured time, not worth. They measured age, not potential. They measured what we had been, not what we could become. She pointed at the empty seats. 3 species are gone forever because of the harvesters, but how many others were destroyed before they ever had a chance? How many young species gave up, accepted protectorate status because they were told they were not good enough, faded into history because no one believed in them? The chamber was utterly silent. We were lucky. We had the strength to walk away, to build in silence, to become something that could not be ignored. But not every species will be so fortunate. Not every species will have 20 years to prove themselves. She looked at the High Seer directly. Let our silence be the last silence born of wounded pride. Let no species ever again walk out of this chamber feeling that they are worthless. Let the memory of what we went through change how this council treats those who come after. She paused. That is my 4th request. The High Seer stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly she turned to the other council members, the High Commander, the Ani, the Eth, the others. You heard the request, she said. What say you? The High Commander rose. His face was unreadable. He walked down from his seat and crossed the floor until he stood before the human ambassador. I was the one who laughed loudest, he said. His deep voice was rough with emotion. I was the one who called you children, who told you to go home and wait 1,000 years. He looked down at the small human woman before him, a warrior looking at a warrior. I was wrong, and I have had 21 years and 1 war to understand how wrong I was. He turned to face the chamber. I support the 4th request. Let it be written into the charter of this council. Let no species ever again be mocked for their youth. Let us judge by deeds, not by years, by character, not by age. His voice rose. Humanity saved us. They did not have to. They had every reason to watch us die, but they came anyway, because that is who they are, and we should strive to be worthy of that example. He looked back at Ambassador. The 4th request has my vote. One by one, the other council members rose. One by one, they voiced their support. The Ani, the Eth, all of them. The vote was unanimous. It is done, the High Seer announced. Let the records show that on this day, the Galactic Council formally abolished the practice of mockery toward younger species. Let all who come after us be treated with the dignity they deserve. She looked at Ambassador. Is there anything else? The ambassador shook her head. No, High Seer, that was all. Then let the formal session end, and let a new era begin. The session ended, but the delegates remained, talking, sharing. For the first time in 21 years, humans and the elder races spoke as equals. Ambassador found herself standing beside the High Commander. The ancient warrior looked at her with eyes that had seen. May I ask you something? He said. Of course. Why? He struggled to find the words. After what we did, after the laughter, the mockery, why did you come? Why did you save us? Ambassador considered the question. She thought of her grandmother, of the stories, of the lessons she had learned at the old woman's knee. When my grandmother was a young woman, she said, she learned a saying, an old earth saying. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. She looked up at the towering alien. We could have watched you die. We could have let the harvesters consume you while we hid in our corner of the galaxy. Some of our people wanted that. They wanted you to feel what we felt, to understand the despair of being alone and mocked and dismissed. She shook her head. But my grandmother taught us something else. She taught us that cruelty is a choice, and so is grace. She taught us that we are defined not by what others do to us, but by how we respond. She paused. You laughed at us, you hurt us, and we chose to be better than the wound. The High Commander was silent for a long moment. I do not understand, he finally said. We are warriors, my people. We believe in strength, in dominance, in crushing those who wrong us. That is our way. It has always been our way. And how has that way served you? The question hung in the air. The High Commander thought of his people's history, the wars, the conquests, the endless struggle for supremacy, and then the harvesters, the defeat, the destruction. Not well, he admitted, not well at all. Ambassador nodded. Strength is important, we learned that. We built the strongest fleet in the galaxy, but strength without wisdom is just violence. Power without compassion is just tyranny. She looked around the chamber, at humans and aliens talking together, at the beginning of something new. My grandmother wanted a seat at the table, but more than that, she wanted to change what the table meant. She wanted a galaxy where strength and compassion could exist together, where species helped each other instead of crushing each other, where the young were nurtured, not mocked. She turned back to the High Commander. That's why we came, that's why we fought, that's why we asked for the fourth request, not for ourselves, for everyone who comes after. The High Commander studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he did something no had ever done before a human. He bowed. Not a small bow, not a nod of acknowledgement, a deep bow of respect, of gratitude, of recognition that he was in the presence of something he did not fully understand but knew was greater than himself. Thank you, he said, for saving us, for teaching us, for being better than we deserved. When he straightened, there were tears in his ancient eyes. Ambassador reached out and placed her hand on his massive arm, a small gesture, a human gesture, connection across the vast gulf between their species. We are all learning, she said. That's all any of us can do. Learn, grow, try to be better tomorrow than we were today. She smiled, her grandmother's smile. Welcome to the future, High Commander. Let's build it together. The formal celebrations lasted for days. There were ceremonies, speeches, treaties signed and agreements made. Humanity took its seat on the council, the archives were opened, a new age began. But on the final day, Ambassador slipped away from the festivities. She walked alone through the corridors of Prime, past the new carvings that showed humanity's triumph, until she reached a small observation deck. She stood there looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home, the world where her grandmother had been born, the world where her grandmother had died, knowing that her work was complete. We did it, Grandma, she whispered to the stars. Everything you dreamed of, everything you worked for, it happened. The stars did not answer, but somehow she felt a presence, a warmth, as if an old woman with patient eyes and a heart full of hope was standing beside her. They laughed at you, she continued. They thought you were nothing, but you knew, you always knew. You saw what we could become, even when no one else did. She touched the pendant around her neck. It had belonged to her grandmother, a simple thing, a small silver disc with the flag of Earth on one side. On the other side, 3 words: dignity, determination, grace. His personal motto, the words she had lived by, the words she had taught her granddaughter. I hope you're proud, Ambassador said. I hope wherever you are you can see what your silence built, what your patience earned, what your faith in humanity made possible. She looked at the stars for a long moment. The galaxy will never laugh at us again, but more than that, they'll never laugh at anyone again. Because of you, because of what you started, because you walked out of that chamber with your head held high and decided to be better than the wound. She smiled through her tears. Rest now, Grandma, we'll take it from here. She stayed there for a long time, watching the stars. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, where souls go when their work is done, an old woman smiled. Her granddaughter was right. They had laughed because they could not imagine what humanity would become, but had always known. And now the whole galaxy knew too. The silence had ended, the laughter had stopped, and nothing would ever be the same. But for the first time in 21 years, that was a good thing. A very good thing indeed.